For most chapters, I will not be splitting up my lecture into two separate YouTube links. However, this chapter is so loaded with information that I feel like separating them will make it more palatable. Plus, the program I'm using to record on does not let me have a lecture longer than 15 minutes. And when we're coming to the aspects of delivery, squishing all of that into one 15-minute lecture is not practical. So moving on to the second major aspect of delivery is the physical aspects of delivery. So we just went over everything that had to do with the vocals that we are going to be using when giving a speech. Now I want to take some time to talk about what your body does. So there are things like appearance, eye contact, facial expressions, gestures, movement, and posture. So I want to spend a little bit of time going through these. So the first one is appearance. I will not be grading you on your appearance. However, I do know that the more that you dress the part, the more confident people tend to feel. So it's important to both look the part of a professional public speaker, but it's also important to make sure that you feel comfortable as well. So if you don't feel comfortable in a suit and tie, don't wear a suit and tie. But if a pair of dress slacks and a button-up top would work for you, great. If you prefer to wear a dress or a skirt, that is your choice. If you prefer to wear pants, that is your choice. However, giving your speech and recording it while you're wearing a Screw the World t-shirt and a pair of ripped Holy jeans might not be putting the best professional foot forward that you can. So while I will not be grading you on it, I highly recommend that you take a little bit of time to make sure that your appearance at least looks presentable. Also, to people that have longer hair, make sure that your hair is pulled back or slicked back or hairsprayed back or pushed back, because there is nothing more distracting than having hair in the face, hair across the eyes, which makes it hard for the audience to see you, see your facial expressions, and engage in what you are having to say. Further, if you have hair in your face or hair that falls into your face, then you have the movement of pushing your hair back or pushing your hair to the side, and all of those things are needless gestures that can then distract the audience from your message. So just make sure that you keep in mind those things. The only other major thing about appearance I want to bring up is staying aware of, I call it noisy jewelry or accessories. So having clicky bracelets or earrings that clink or anything else that might make noise. Anytime you have noise or things that move strangely, all of these things are potentially distractions for the audience. And if the audience becomes distracted, then they can no longer pay attention to what you're saying. Eye contact. This one is incredibly important when you are giving a speech to a live audience. So for the final speech that you will be giving in this class, I will require you to have an audience of at least 4 people. So keep that in mind when we get to the persuasive speech. I won't be requiring it for your first speech or your informative speech. Before your persuasive speech, I will want you to have a live audience so you can get used to that idea of making eye contact with them. For the sake of this online speaking class, making eye contact also means that a majority of the time I want you looking at wherever your camera is and making sure that you are making eye contact with that camera, which will then be making eye contact with us. The next element of physical delivery that the book goes over is the discussion of facial expressions. So with facial expressions, when you can have them and keep them authentic to what you're talking about, it will aid in your speech. But you need to be careful, because if you are giving an upbeat speech about how wonderful it is that there's sunshine and rainbows, and you look sad or angry or like you're going to cry, those don't mix well. Or even if you're giving a speech about something really sad, the drinking and driving rates, or cancer, or the Holocaust, or euthanasia, or things along those lines, and you're smiling bright and prettily, those two things don't mix well, and they look odd to the audience and confuses them. So make sure that your facial expressions are matching what your topic is about. That brings us to gestures, which is something that is a hard thing for us to work with and work on because it is something that a lot of people don't have a lot of experience with explicitly putting gestures in places or in areas. So I will be posting a video of an example of an introductory speech, and I want you to pay careful attention to my gestures. But some things with the gestures to keep in mind. You have to be careful that they're not thrown away. And so what I mean by that is those are the little gestures that are down by your side that don't really serve a purpose. They're just kind of there. You also want to be wary of what I call repetitive gestures, which is the same movement over and over and over again. You also want to avoid over gesturing, which for me, and when I give speeches, is my number one flaw. I am an over gesturer, and I am aware of that, and I constantly work on it. I've gotten it pretty well under control while I'm giving a speech, but in my day-to-day activities, it's still terrible. You want to also make sure that your gestures are precise, serve a specific purpose, are highlighting a specific thing. You want to make sure that they are firm, confident, and that you know exactly what you're doing instead of just letting your hands and arms do whatever they want to do. Movement is the next one that the book talks about. So movement is most specifically if you choose to walk from one place to another. And if you are choosing to do movement, you must make sure that you have a specific point that you are going to, and when you get there, you have a specific word that you hit, that's when you plant yourself again, and that you're not just nervously pacing or walking with no point to it without any specific purpose, just walking for the sake of walking. That reads as nervous and awkward to the audience, which makes you appear as a weaker public speaker. Then the last one is posture. So posture is to make sure that your feet stay shoulder width apart and that you stay planted in your area and that you're not swaying or you're not shifting weight from foot to foot or rocking from your toes to your heels, or, and this is most commonly with women, I call it the hip pop, where you put all of your weight on one foot so your hip pops off to the side. Any of those things don't give off the air of confidence. Instead, you should stand shoulder width apart, and if you're a swayer, I recommend that you push your hips slightly forward so that way it reduces your likelihood of swaying. It makes it harder for you to sway. For all of these things that I was just talking about, please make sure you pay attention to a video that I will be posting shortly here, in which I will go over all of these things that I just went over and give you a visual to go along with my descriptions. Moving on to the methods of delivery. So there are 4 main methods that people choose to give speeches on. 4 main methods of delivery for speeches. The first one is impromptu. That one is one that people probably do the least of. That is when you are given a speech topic or given an idea right out of the gate and you give a speech on the fly and you don't have much time to plan anything out. You don't usually have much time to gather outside sources or anything along those lines. You're making it up as you go along. The next step above that one is what I call extemporaneous, and this is the one you will be using in this class. When you give your introductory speech, your informative speech, your persuasive speech, you will be using extemporaneous speaking. And that one, it's kind of a mixture of all of the other 3. So you have a note cards to prompt you. So you have some stuff that is memorized, or that is manuscript, which we will get to in a moment here. You should practice it enough that you have bits and pieces of it memorized, but you're not going to be completely memorized, which leaves you to change things up every now and then to add an aspect of impromptu. So impromptu is when you come up with things on the spot with no planning or whatsoever. Memorized is the exact opposite of that, and that's when you go into give a speech where everything is memorized down to the T. You don't have any note cards. Everything is memorized in your brain. It's what you see in theater with actors and plays and things of that sort. And then you have manuscript. Manuscript is the one that I think we see most commonly with public speakers. So like the president and news people all use manuscript method of delivery. And that is when the speech is written out word for word and put up on a prompter or put on their note cards or put on their paper. And they read off of it and share that information with you. But I don't want you using any of those. I want you using extemporaneous, and here's why. If you don't do any planning and you just go up there and decide to wing it, usually impromptu, you're going to end up without the sources required when we get to the informative and persuasive speeches. And a lot of times that is less well thought out. It's usually not well thought out or given a lot of thought to your language choices or your body posture or gestures or anything like that. Everything's on the fly, and so it's usually less organized. I don't want you doing the memorized version of it, because what happens if you get 3 minutes into your speech and you forget what your next line is? Now all of a sudden you're stuck and you don't have anything to get you unstuck. So that's why with extemporaneous, what you have is a note card which has your key thoughts and your key words and your key ideas written out on it that will give you those little hints as to where to go in case you do get stuck. And I don't want you doing manuscript, which is the type of speech that most of my students want to give, because I have found a vast majority of the time when we use manuscript method of delivery, people just read directly off the paper, which means we don't get the conversational tones, we don't get much eye contact, we don't usually get a lot of vocal variety because they're just reading off the paper. So I kind of take the best ideas of memorized delivery, impromptu delivery, manuscript delivery. We mush them all together, and that's when we come up with extemporaneous speaking, which is what you will be doing in this class. So how to prepare for an extemporaneous speech. These are all great tips. Read the preparation outline aloud. So when you have your preparation outline, which is pretty close to a manuscript, the more you read that out loud, the more familiar you become with it. Consider your support materials and make sure that they are integrated flawlessly into your speech. Prepare your delivery outline, which is what is going to go on your note cards. Prepare your presentational aids. Practice multiple times. Do a final dress rehearsal. So practice multiple times. Practice, 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 practice. And I tell people this. Practice all the time. Practice out loud. Practice standing up as if you are presenting to the camera, to the people. Because you can practice all you want sitting in your bathrobe, in a comfy chair, reading it over and over and over again in your head. But when you are actually up on your feet, actually saying the words out loud, it is a totally different story. So make sure that you practice not just multiple times, but you practice as if you are giving your speech. So that's the do a final dress rehearsal. Make sure that you are in the outfit that you are going to be wearing, so that way if there's anything weird about the outfit, weird pulls or tugs or whatever, you're prepared for that. Do a final dress rehearsal before you hit that record button. Practice your speech one time through as if you were to record it, and then you can actually record it. Prepare for questions. That's not a big deal because there will be no questions as part of our class, but prepare for that if you were to give a speech where there will be questions asked at the end. And how you prepare for them is just come up with questions you think people might ask. And then lastly, prepare for the day of the speech, which means on the day of the speech, make sure you take special care of your voice, special care of your body, make sure you get enough sleep, make sure you eat a good breakfast, make sure you do any anxiety-reducing exercises that you need to do, anything that's going to make you as prepared as you can be to give your speech. This last bit I'm going to go through really quickly because the next chapter goes over it in its entirety. So how to prepare for a mediated presentation. So a presentation that you are going to be giving for this class is a mediated presentation because you're recording your speech. So figure out what kind of speech, which type of presentation. Are you going to give it live? Are you going to give it hybrid where there's some people in the room, some people that are watching it via recording? How are you giving it? Be prepared for any unique factors that might come up. So things like don't wait till the last minute to record your speech in case you have problems uploading it. Practice, practice, practice. Practice in front of your recording device before ever hitting play. Maybe you actually do record it once to see how it looks and see how it feels. And make sure that you are just prepared for whatever factors like that may arise. So the next chapter we'll be talking about presentational aids and how to incorporate them into your speech. Make sure you pay attention to the other postings I have, which are going to give you further visual tips on improving your physical speaking delivery techniques.